My name is Beth Novak, and I'm very delighted to welcome you to the first ever Geeks Meet Wonks Ignite session. Our presenters had to ask, who are the geeks and who are the wonks? Which remains to be seen, but the goal of this session was to bring together people in practice, from government, from public interest, from nonprofits, together with the research community to help create a match, if you will. These are people doing and deep in the trenches on doing important work in the public interest and for the public good, and they are coming to you to seek help, assistance, collaboration, and the hope is that you might find some of their work interesting and cutting edge and new and perhaps a fertile ground both for interesting research experiments that really matter in the world. We're doing this as an Ignite session, so that means we will have 5-minute presentations. Because that is extremely brief, I invite you to go to the GovLab website and check out the one-page descriptions of each project. And I also invite you to go to the HackPad, which is listed there, which I will also tweet in a moment, and it's probably already gone out. It's gone out already on the Twitter, on the hashtag. When we encourage you there to please give feedback to the presenters on the HackPad as well. They've traveled from very far to present only for 5 minutes, and so we invite all of your questions and comments, the fact that you might be interested in collaborating with them, anything you want, please put it on, share it on the HackPad. We're going to do one presentation, Q&A, presentation, Q&A. So to ensure that we're timely in the transitions, if somebody is talking and you start to think you have a question, if you don't mind starting to come down to the mics, that would really help to facilitate a timely transition. We're going to make this lively and compelling and do 6 rapid-fire presentations. And I'm really glad to welcome up the first speaker, who is Tara Montgomery from Consumer Reports.
Thank you. Thanks, Beth. I think this is such a brilliant idea, so thanks for coming back for this session. Yes, Consumer Reports. We're a nonprofit, which you may not all realize, that works in the public interest to improve the lives of consumers and make sure that the marketplace is fair, safe, and just, and that consumers have the information they need to protect themselves. So about 6 years ago, we got into healthcare. And healthcare is, as many of you know, a very complex space in general and for consumers and patients in particular. And we're very curious about how to improve the use of information to both improve outcomes for patients and help the decision-making process for patients in the world. I'll say right up front, because I'm really excited about this, that a week ago we got a big investment to hire people and hire people in the digital area. So my Twitter tag might be a good place if anybody is looking for a job this year in areas like I'm going to talk about. So that's the first minute of my 5. But in health, big data has been transformative in healthcare. I mean, there's data sets coming out on pricing, on the human genome, on clinical outcomes, on the effects of prescription drugs. Outside of healthcare, data is being collected on consumer behaviors, consumer sentiments, and people are leveraging this data, obviously, in very commercial ways. But what has kind of struck us is that this has not really been brought together to support patients as human beings, and that healthcare can be alienating for people. The doctor-patient relationship is very pressured by time and by lack of information, and even by the presence of technology in the doctor's office, which can be a barrier between a doctor and a patient. If somebody's looking at the electronic medical record instead of looking at you in the eye, they're not really engaging with you and listening to you, or necessarily asking you appropriate questions. And really, one size fits all doesn't work well in healthcare. The collective data doesn't really speak to the individual's needs and preferences and cultural situation. So I have a very broad kind of idea here to begin to get some feedback on, which is kind of what if we collected from the crowd data about their personal lives that was not about their medical lives, but it was about everything else, about their financial concerns, about their emotional state, about their family, their culture, their behaviors, habits, the things really, in many of our cases, the things we put on Facebook about ourselves may determine a lot about what happens in our health. If we're under pressure because we've lost a pet, or we have a difficult family situation, or we don't speak English, or there are all kinds of things going on, or we have financial problems. That's often being shared, but it's not being kind of connected with our medical records. And so in the doctor-patient meeting, they have your clinical history, and they might have some science to kind of help guide, use guidelines to kind of recommend courses of action. But what if the medical record also indicated something about who you are as an individual? And then that conversation can be very focused and personally relevant, and leave out the things that are not relevant based on who you are as an individual. And so I'm really interested in what we could do to harness data from places outside of healthcare to inform healthcare. And on a broader level, perhaps we would also have a more interesting data set for clinical people and policymakers to use to look at the relationship between real people's personal lives and their health lives, and look for trends and patterns there and say, wow, the people with this kind of life and culture or psychological state have these kinds of health behaviors, these kinds of health outcomes, this kind of responsiveness to treatments. So there seems to be the potential for something kind of collective on the research level that will help with medical intelligence, but I'm also really interested in the personal decision making. And at Consumer Reports, we rate things. We rate health, we rate doctors, we rate medical tests, we rate prescription drugs, but always based on clinical evidence. So if you're going onto a website and saying, how do I make a decision that worked for people like me? There's no tool to say, here are the people like you, and here's what happened for them when they went through this medical treatment or made this medical choice. Or here are the options that are available to people like you based on your economic situation, your linguistic situation, your family situation. So really that's the big question, is it feasible to look at data that way and make medicine more compassionate and culturally relevant and personally appropriate? Is it feasible? If so, how? And is it desirable, or are there privacy issues or other barriers that make this a more dubious proposition? So this is a brainstorm kind of step. Thank you all.
Do you have any questions? And I'm going to put the hack pad just back up here so people can see. I sent this around, but I'm going to put the links back up here again for the hack pad. Any questions? And if,
Hi, Lyle Unger, University of Pennsylvania. So we've been collecting Facebook and medical records. Also, I'm curious, what more concretely would you propose doing? So what have you brainstormed about actual things you might do and how to use those?
Well, I kind of want other people's help with that, but there could be something where, what if I made my Facebook page open to somebody that managed my medical record, and that they could intelligently kind of connect some dots there and go, whoa, there's a relationship between when she has this symptom and when she posts a thing like this. There's a relationship between when she travels and when she stops taking her medicine. And then there's information for a physician to say, wow, there's some behavior going on that I never thought about. I need to talk differently to this person. So that's just one kind of idea, but I'm really curious about on a collective basis as well, if there are mass trends.
Fun. Let's talk. It sounds very fun.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is it too late to ask a question still, or? I just wanted to ask, like, if it's possible for Facebook to recommend me the book that I should be reading, and it's very accurate actually, then maybe you can even take the doctor out of the equation. Like, I mean, you can just recommend a treatment, or you could suggest to me that I might have such and such a problem.
Absolutely, and I think things like Watson can take you there, because they can look at the clinical information and maybe process something to recommend to you that's suitable for you.
It seems really easily possible.
Yeah.
It should be possible to do something like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
and doctors feel quite threatened by this kind of thing, but that's okay.